All right then. Introduction to planning. This is the first topic. Okay. So this is just revision about project management. Perhaps some of you have taken the project management class either in this master program or even in your undergraduate study. So the concept pretty much the same anyway. But this project management knowledge area, I call it knowledge area, is based on PMI, Project Management Institute. It is a very famous organization worldwide, based in US, but they do have branches all over the world. And if you are the member of PMI, you can have access to so-called PMBOK, Project Management Body of Knowledge. Whatever thing that we learn, basically we must refer to body of knowledge. Even civil engineering itself, during undergraduate study, do have body of knowledge. We can refer to publication, example, American Society of Civil Engineering. They do publish body of knowledge book in terms of book. So what kind of knowledge that civil engineer should study? So similarly, when you study project management, so these are the knowledge area that you should be well versed, because you will need to use this knowledge somehow when managing a project. Okay, the knowledge area is named in such a way. First is integration. We are not going to go into this thing in detail. Just I want to highlight the word time is there. Our focus when we talk about planning and scheduling is about the management of time. You see, time management. But since last 2 years, Project Management Institute has do not really, they already changed. Instead of management of time, they now change management of schedule, because time is quite abstract to manage. But when we talk about schedule, it is something that you can manage, because normally schedule, we can attach some kind of dates to that. That's why the word schedule is being used instead of time. So don't get yourself confused. For me, time is a bigger scope, whereas schedule is part of the time management, all right? And then other thing, cost, quality, procurement, human resource, communication, risk management, and stakeholders. So since the time is one of the most important things, so that's why planning and scheduling come under this particular knowledge area. Okay. Okay. All right. When we talk about project management process, this is another terminology. The previous one was knowledge area. Now it is process. What does process mean? Step by step that you must do in order to fulfill the obligation of managing something. First, we start with initiating. Remember, all these knowledge area will be embedded inside this process. Okay, will be embedded. Initiating could basically have the integration of scope, the integration and scope, for instance, whereas planning could have the element of time and cost. So that's how the knowledge area are being arranged or being put together. So the first process could be initiating. This is the first one. And then planning. Again, planning is been mentioned. This is planning. Then after planning, we must execute. Execute meaning to say we put our planning into real things. Planning could be on paper or on your head. But when time comes, of course, you need to put everything on the reality. Okay, so that is what we call executing. And then while executing, it is not after you execute, then only you monitor and control. No, no. This thing basically come hand in hand. Monitoring and control come during executing. Okay, monitoring and control. What do you monitor? You monitor many, many things. You monitor the progress of the project or the progress of work that you plan. Either it is according to your plan or not. If it doesn't work according to your plan, what are you going to do? You can control, or in such a way we call it, we take action. We must go back to the replanning, so we call it revised plan, and then go back to executing, and then go to the monitoring and control, and then if you satisfy, then only the project will be closing meaning to say the end of the project. That's it. It goes in a circle like this. Okay. If we show this diagram in terms of time frame, whenever we want to start any project, regardless of the name of the project, and first thing before we go into this thing, remember the word project can refer to many, many, many things. But since we are in the civil engineering field, we are well versed with the construction project. All of discipline, either your study is electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, business, they also learn about project management. But the nature of the project, the name of the project could be different. For instance, people in the faculty of computer science, their project could be develop a software. That is the name of the project. But even you want to develop a project, a software, which is most of the time is inside the computer, you do not see anything. Okay, it is a software anyway, but the process is always the same. You start with initiating. What is initiating? Initiating is the process of identifying who are the stakeholders, meaning to say, who are the interested party. You develop a software for whom? Or you develop a project for the interest of whom? Who will be your end user? Who will be your client? Who will be the consultant? The contractor might not be in that stage yet, unless you come up with a design and build project. Okay, but the most important thing in initiation, um, a lot of studies such as feasibility studies. Okay, so that will be grouped under initiation. Then goes into planning. Okay, then planning come into the action. What to plan? There are so many things to plan. Later on in our slide, we go into that. Okay, there are so many things to plan. We need to plan for time, we need to plan for scope, we need to plan for the quality, we need to plan for procurement, we need to plan for the type of contract. There are many, many things that can be put into planning. Planning is not just for the sake of we just want to construct things. Constructing during construction, that is called planning also, but that is for particular duration of construction. But now we are talking about the whole project development. There is no project yet. We just want to start doing something from scratch. Okay. Then execution. Execution involves a lot of things. For instance, if we are doing construction project, then this is the time frame where we construct the building based on the paper that we design things. Everything prior to the execution is basically everything is just on paper. Now is the real action. Now you notice that monitoring and controlling is being drawn in such a way, because during execution you need to monitor things and then you need to take action. This is what we call control, meaning to say take action. Take action basically involve revised plan. When you revise plan, then you execute. So that's why there is a loop that show monitoring and controlling linger around planning and execution phase. And then only after you satisfy, then the project come to the closure. Even during closing of the project, there are a lot of things to do also. You need to check about the defect. You need to check about document, for instance, maintenance documents. You need to finalize the account, etc., etc. You need to do testing of the facilities. Then only you will hand over to the client. So if you hand over to the client, meaning to say, maybe I would say around 99% of the project could be considered as accomplished. But you have to remember, even though you hand over to the client, a defect liability period is still there. Defect liability period is like warranty. When you buy a handphone, there is a warranty of 1 year, for instance. Even though the manufacturer of the handphone, through the supplier or distributor, had passed the product to you, but the responsibility remained the same. Similarly, for the construction industry, it's the same concept anyway. Okay. Now we go back to the basic knowledge. I'm not really sure whether you have come across this terminology. This is just a revision. Project. What is a project? A project is a temporary by nature. Okay, temporary by nature, meaning to say, if you are doing something ongoing every day, never stop, that shall not be considered as a project. That could be considered as operation, your daily operation or your routine work. Project meaning to say it has some beginning and ending, and then you attach costs, you attach people to that thing, to that particular work. You have, for instance, you set the goal in terms of quantity, then the project come to the end. That's what we call project. Okay, let's say, to give you an example, let's say every day we eat. In the morning, we just have breakfast, and then we are going to have lunch, we are going to have evening tea, we are going to have dinner, and then we are going to have supper. 24 hours eating and eating. Okay, but what if one day you want to celebrate your birthday, for instance? So you want to invite your friend for some kind of food, makan-makan, whatever. Okay, so that makan-makan or a birthday party usually have some kind of food. That's what we call a project. Why? Because it has a specific date, starting time, ending time, and then you must plan the birthday, how is going to be the theme or whatever, who are people going to be invited. There are costs that you associate with that kind of event. And then there are people, there are what else? Everything have the characteristic of what we call a project. That's what we call project, okay? And then what is project management? When you combine the word project with the management, then we do have a definition of project management. Project management is the application of knowledge, skill, tool, and technique to project activities to meet the project requirement. Later on, we are going to see what is this project requirement is all about. Okay, now let's say I want to give you example of this project management. Knowledge, let's say knowledge, skill, tool, and then technique. When you combine all these things, then only this one is being called project management. Okay, project management. So example, knowledge. In terms of what? In terms of planning and scheduling. Let's say project management in planning. In planning or in scheduling, planning and scheduling is always being used as a partner, for instance. It is similar to monitoring and control. They are not the same. Monitoring and control, in terms of wording, they are not the same, but they are interrelated. Similarly, planning and scheduling, they do have definition by itself, but they are interrelated. Let's say tools. What are some people associate with planning tool, some people mention scheduling tool. I would say scheduling tool. What are the scheduling tool? If you want to plan something, we can do manually, but we are not going to be able to manage a big project if we do manually. It is better to use tools. What could be the tools? Example, let's talk about software. Now, the most common software that we in Malaysia use, or even worldwide, let's say simple one is Microsoft Project, which we are going to learn later on, Microsoft Project. And then another one is Primavera. And of course, there are a lot more, okay? A lot more software. Let's zoom in into these two software. Okay, these two software is just basically a tools. Even though you can purchase that software through Lazada or Shopee for 5 to 10 ringgit, okay, they will give you keys to that software, and then you will they give you the installer, and then you run the key. Okay, it works 100% as original. Never mind. Okay, but without any knowledge of operating this software, you are not going to optimize the utilization of this software. It's just like when you open up any Microsoft Office software. Let's say we normally use Microsoft Words, Microsoft Excel, PowerPoint. We might not regularly use Publisher, and then what else? There are a few more, okay? Microsoft Office software. When you open up the software, basically, sometimes you don't even know where to start, how to start. So you might say that this software is no use because you are the one that basically do not know how to use. People develop software with certain knowledge. So in order to understand this software, you need to go for courses. In our class, we are going to learn only a few basic things. But if you want to be specialized in planning and scheduling, I would suggest you have to go for courses after courses. Example, Microsoft Project. Alone, if you go for courses, the courses could run for 3 to 4 days. This is just to understand how to operate the software, meaning to say the features of the software. You click this button and that button, next button until the end of the books. You can, Microsoft also produce what we call books that you can refer to. You can get a lot of books from the internet anyway. Okay, 3 to 4 days just to get accustomed with the Microsoft project features. But that is not going to get you very far. You need to attend another course, what we call managing a project using MS Project. This is the course normally being taught by professional people in the construction industry who has been using Microsoft Project in their project. They could be the best person, the most resource person that you can learn. You cannot learn from well, people who have never have experience with the project. It is quite difficult. Okay, you cannot fully capitalize on this software. So in order to go for this course, you're usually split into a few levels. Level 1, level 2, and level 3. Level 1, they can call it basic. This is intermediate. This is basic, intermediate. This could be advanced. So basic intermediate could be running for 2 to 3 days, whereas advanced is another 2 days. I would say 3 plus 2 would be 5 days. So 5 days to really use Microsoft Project effectively, and 3 to 4 days to really understand the features. You see how many days that you need to in order to learn just that software. Okay, so you need knowledge. See, knowledge. Then, how about technique? How about technique? All right, we are going to learn even in our second slide, we do have scheduling technique. Technique that we can use to schedule our project. Microsoft Project and Primavera all basically use PDM diagram. PDM diagram. And there are a lot more diagram. You might have heard about bar chart or Gantt chart. You might have heard about arrow diagram, AON diagram, PERT, line of balance, etc., etc. So those are the technique, the scheduling technique, you see. And if you want to understand how Microsoft Project works, you really need to understand PDM is again what we call knowledge. Okay, that would be the knowledge. You need to be able to calculate manually using PDM diagram in order to be able to detect what could be the error inside your Microsoft project. We can input data, and then at the end of the day, Microsoft project will give you output. But if you input wrong data, then the computer will give you the wrong output. The output might look nice, but it is wrong. How are you going to know? Only people who have knowledge can detect something weird about those kind of output. Then he can quickly go detect what could be the issues. All right. And the other important thing is basically the interpretation of output. That is another knowledge, and I would say even skill that you need. Okay. So knowledge wise, you need to understand basic of planning and scheduling. You need to understand about many concepts. And then how about skill? What is skill basically? Skill normally, you cannot get much just by reading or just by going to class. Let's say after you finish your master project, you thought that you already have the project management skill. Please, that is a wrong concept. Skill cannot be acquired just like that. Skill, you must go to the real construction site of project, then you develop through time, then only you can be skillful. By reading things, you might have knowledge, but skill you must practice. Even I myself, I know about Microsoft project, but not too much. But sometimes I will not use that every day anyway. Normally when we do have the planning and scheduling class, then I need to go back and practice those skill. Okay, it can easily what we call hide away from your brain. It is there, but you need to get it back once. You need to recall it when you want to tell people or explain to people. Okay, what kind of skill? Example of the skill. All right. In order to do planning scheduling requires sequence of work. Work sequence. This is what we call work sequence. How do you know this work sequence? In planning terminology, we call it WBS. Only people who basically have experience can have idea about what could be the sequence of work. Because there are a lot of things in construction, you can basically, instead of using the concept of finish to start of activity, you can make it concurrently in order to cut short the project duration. But sometimes you do not know how basically the overlapping of activity will affect the real execution of work. Only experienced people will know. That is an example of the skill that you normally acquire throughout the duration of working experience. Next, what could be the skill? Work method. This I call it construction method. Construction method also related to work sequence, but it is more to that, not only sequence. it basically tells us what are the equipment to be used. When you use equipment, different equipment will give you different productivity. That is the most important thing. If you want to get things finished quicker, you must use a proper or the right equipment. Even though you might bring the big, very big equipment, but if you couple with the wrong manpower, with the wrong operator, you might not get things done quicker. You thought that it is quicker, but there are a lot of combination of machine, man, and then the work method combined together, and then with a proper scheduling of work, then you will get the right things done quicker at a cheaper price. That is the most important thing. At the end of the day, the way you plan your work has implication to the cost. So that is the most significant thing. The idea of planner, by right, when he plan for a project, at the end of the day, he should plan in such a way we can get things done at a quicker time and at the most what we call minimum cost, or what we call in planning terminology optimize in terms of cost. Okay, so sometimes the word optimize might not be equivalent to minimum sometimes is not always good, because you might sacrifice certain things, okay, in terms of quality, in terms of many other aspects. But optimize would be the most accurate terminology. So when you combine knowledge, skill, you use the appropriate tools, and then you understand the technique, then that is what project management is all about. Okay, so you see, even that definition itself is a very lengthy explanation. Okay, project requirement. Remember, in definition of project management, there is a two words here: project requirement. What is project requirement? This is the example. Okay, project requirement. We are giving example with regard to construction. Okay, our example with regard to construction. And in any construction or construction project, completion of time meaning to say schedule, equivalent to schedule. Don't get confused. So when you complete on time, within time, and then you fulfill project requirement, because normally in a project, the client are very strict on time completion. Anywhere in the world, big or small, people always focus on complete on time. Then another one, quality. Construction is being paid according to the quality of the product. But quality also very subjective. You can, if you monitor the quality closely, meaning to say from the beginning until the end of the work, then it is okay. But if you only monitor every now and then, you only monitor at the finishing, you might not see what's happening during the process. Because for instance, concrete, what can we see is only on the surface. What happened inside the concrete? If we do not monitor, then the quality could be subjective unless we do the testing. But anyway, the testing could be the one of the ways um, to verify whether your quality of work is up to the standard or not. Then only the client will pay you. Okay, that is meeting the project requirement. Then cost, that is another thing. Nobody in this world, even though you are rich people, you do not care about costs. When you want to do some kind of project, let's say you want to use the highest building in the world, people also concerned about costs. You want to do a small what we call house, very small house. Okay, you have a small budget. of course, you care about the cost. Okay, everything is all about cost constraint. If you can complete the project within the cost, then the client will be happy. So that's what we call meeting the project requirement. Meeting environmental requirement standard. We do not want to complete the project within times, quality, and then within project cost. But during the construction, for instance, you destroy the environment. For instance, what could be the environment? Dust could be the environment, noise, and then surface runoff, and then all kind of wastage, construction wastage. So we must take care of the environmental aspect during construction as well. If you can do that, then you meet the project requirement. What else? Safety and health. We do not want, while doing the construction project, the highest tower in the world, for instance, 1,000 people have to die because of that project. So what do you think? Is it worse or not? You as a client, you might be very happy. Oh, okay, I managed to build the Burj Khalifa, whatever. But then 1,000 people have to die because while constructing your project. What is the point of having such a big building, but then people have to sacrifice the life for you? So it is not worth. Okay? Or even they might not die, so they get some kind of accident which basically can cause them paralyzed or permanent disablement, or even they stress out due to excessive KPI at the construction site. You know what? Last semester we learned about site management and safety during my safety class. I did mention when we learned about occupational stress. There are many research about stress at the construction site with regard to the workers, with regard to the professional and the project manager. As the name imply, basically normally have the highest stress, okay, have the highest stress level among the professional. But then, how about the construction workers? Do you think they are not stressed out while working at the construction site? You need to remember what I told you last semester. There were a report in UK that mentioned the suicide rate among construction workers is one of the highest in UK. The news came last year, okay? Last year meaning 2019, which is quite recent. Even the construction workers also stress out while working in the construction industry, you see? So we do not want people to have some kind of detrimental impact on their life or physical or well-being while trying to fulfill the objective of the project, meaning to say we want to complete the project on time, whatever, but then a lot of people have to sacrifice. And then lastly, fulfilling contractual obligation. Okay, when a project was already identified the winner, okay, the winner for the project, meaning to say the contractor, automatically now the contract is being formed. Even though the contractor might not have signed yet the document, it's just a matter of official, but in terms of reality, the contract has been formed because you have been announced as the winner, so you cannot withdraw. As simple as that, okay? So you must go on with the construction phase or executing phase. So between contractor and client, then they will need to basically sign an agreement, which consists of obligation on both parties. What are the obligation of contractor and what are the obligation of the client are being spelled out in the contract document. So in the contract document, basically mention a lot of things about the time, about the progress, about the quality. Not only what we mentioned inside this diagram, there are a lot more. So you must fulfill the contractual obligation. If you cannot do that, then you can be considered as a breach of contract. Even as a contractor, let's say you hire illegal workers. By right, in the contract already mentioned, you need to hire legal workers, especially foreign workers. You need to pay them sufficient. You need to pay them what we call wages accordingly. Let's say you do not do that. Well, as a client basically have the right to basically terminate your contract because you basically breached some element of the contract. So again, not only completion of time, environment, safety and health, cost, quality that you need to fulfill. So all aspects of contractual things, you also need to oblige. All right. Okay, that would be the project requirement. Okay, now this is again a recap. Recap meaning to say just a revision. You might have learned this project life cycle in other class. Never mind. Okay, we just want to relate to something. Let's say the timeline of project development. Okay, normally we start a project here. This is what we call the starting point. Starting point, and then the project will go through the feasibility study. There are a lot of projects normally go to through the feasibility study first, meaning to say the study about what? Study about the technical aspect, study about the commercial aspect, whether the project need to be continued or not. If it is okay, then only design development. Okay, design whereby you need to appoint what we call consultant. By consultant, I mean they could be civil engineer, mechanical engineer, electrical engineer, interior designer, architect, everybody. Everybody can be considered as, wait a second. All right, and then what else? Document and tendering. Okay, document and tendering. So this is what we call tendering process, or in different terminology, we call it procurement. Okay, tendering exercise whereby you must put a notice inviting people to basically, wait a second, let me stop, pause reading. Okay, tendering. Okay, what is the purpose of tendering? Is basically to identify the best contractor for the project. Okay, as simple as that. Now, next would be, okay, so the long line there consists of a few things. So after the tender is being awarded, meaning to say we already identified the winner, and then the contractor will start the real construction work sometime, not immediately, because he need to basically submit a few documents. What could be the document? For instance, during this time, in Malaysia, for instance, you need to submit a site layout plan, you need to submit the insurance, you need to submit performance bonds, you need to submit or guarantee sum, you need to submit work schedule or work program. This is part of planning, okay? Work program. Then only you are allowed to start the work. So the work could basically start in a few weeks' time. Then only what we call the construction is going to be taken place. You see, there is a big cycle there. Okay, this cycle, if for instance during after the tender award being given, then the construction phase is already start. Then it will start sometime, and then handover, meaning to say the end of construction. So this is the effectability period, and this is the end of project, what we call responsibility. Okay, so contractor has released their responsibility after that period, and you notice a big cycle here. This is what we call project management terminology in terms of scope. So project management mean from the beginning, this is what we call initiation, then go through the feasibility study, go through design phase, tendering phase, construction phase, handover, defect liability, and then you release the duty. So that is the scope of project management. But then how about construction management? Okay, construction management, you see here. Construction management is this hash line. So you are in the construction management program. You know what? In UTM, we do have project management, master in project management. So the difference between master in project management and master in construction management, it is just a matter of scope. We in construction management focus more during construction phase, whereas project management focus on the bigger things. So that's why if you study project management, you will learn about business aspect, because during these stages, there are some kind of business element involved. But then you also need to learn planning scheduling. You also need to learn about some of the project management aspects, similar things, because if you are managing construction project, so they are somehow related. And I could say it is a repetitious anyway. All right. Then what else inside this picture? Okay, the outer layer represent other things. When you hand over the project, this is what we call operation. Operation mean the facility that you build, you already hand over to the client, and then the client will start to operate that facility. So that kind of scope, we call it facility management. And we in UTM also do have master in facility management. What does facility management mean? Meaning to say you are managing the finished product, meaning to say that whatever building that you already hand over and that building is in operation, you are managing daily operation of the building. You are taking care of about the maintenance, the utilities, the bill, the here and there, and whatever things, the security. So that's what we call facility management. And inside this picture, we also have contract management. See, contract management is this stage, starting from the award until the end. Contract management, we do have master in contract management being offered in the faculty of built environment. Who normally take this contract manager? Normally quantity surveyor. Because quantity surveyor, most of the time they learn about what we call construction law and contract a lot compared to us. So they are the one that in Malaysia, they are the one that mostly we delegate the responsibility in terms of managing everything related to law, contract, and dispute, progress, cost, etc., etc. So if we do have a quantity surveyor at the construction project, then basically we civil engineer, we can focus on other works. What could be other work? Planning and scheduling. Planning and scheduling is the responsibility of engineer, not the QS. But if you are project manager, for sure, you basically have the overall responsibility. You must basically know, even though you might not do the planning and scheduling, you can pass to other professions such as scheduler. We do have in the real environment people who focus on planning and scheduling. They call it planner or even scheduler, or they are doing scheduling. We cannot basically put everything onto the head of project manager or even the site engineer. They simply cannot manage. So that's why we do have different profession that focus on different things. Even we do have profession for quality control people. We do have profession for safety. We do have a profession for environmental control, perhaps, if the project is very big, very big. But if you are working at a very small construction firm or construction project, I believe that you are going to take all the responsibility by yourself. You are the one being called project man, civil engineer, QS, even you need to do surveyor, everything, you see? All right. So, and then lastly about this diagram is what we call life cycle costing. What is life cycle costing? Okay, life cycle costing is one of the discipline in project construction management that basically mention if we can calculate the costs at each phase, meaning to say initiation phase, feasibility, design, tendering stage, pre-construction, post-construction, during construction, and then during defect liability period, during the operation, and even during refurbishment, or during what we call demolition. If we can calculate that cost, that would be fantastic. Then we can use this tool in order to make comparison. Let's say, for instance, you have a piece of land. You wanted to develop a project, but you do not know what kind of project that you want to do. You have a few alternative. Let's say alternative A, B, C, D, E. Each design or each development, let's say alternative A, you want to develop a hotel. Alternative B could be condominium. Alternative C could be a commercial complex. D could be what we call warehouse or whatever. E could be housing. So each of these things, if you can calculate the life cycle cost, then at the end of the day, you can come to the conclusion. Okay, let's say in order to develop project C, let's say the cost, the life cycle cost could be 20 ringgit per day, for instance. This could be 30 ringgit per day. This could be 40, whatever. At the end of the day, you can make a better choice because every cost during the lifespan of the building, sometimes you develop a building that only can last for 30 years. Maybe, let's say you develop a building can last you, let's say you develop a building cost you 1 million. It can last for 20 years. But another building, a little bit expensive, could be around 1.5 million, but it can last around 50 years. Which one is better? That is the concept of life cycle cost, which is one of the discipline inside the construction management, which can be applied to many things. All right then. Okay, project management process. Project management process. You see, this is the same as what I showed you before. Project management process basically consists of 5 things: initiating, planning, executing, and then monitoring and control and closing. But there is this figure basically show us in different views. In the middle of the figure here, we show what we call triple constraint. Normally, people associate triple constraint to quality, time, and cost. But remember, if you refer to Project Management Institute, PMI, the triple constraint, they refer to cost, scope, and schedule. Quality is not being considered as a triple constraint. Okay, remember that. There are different books whereby when you refer, they mean different things. But normally, for most of the people who read general information, they would relate to quality, time, and cost. Okay, and that is what we call objective of the project or project requirement. In short, we do have the 6 requirement previously, environment, safety and health, contractual obligation, etc. But in short, we just want to focus on this triple constraint. In order to achieve this objective of the project requirement, you need to use what we call resources. This is what we call 5M. The first M, material, method, money, man, and then machine. This is what we call resources. 5 M's. Resources. Okay. These resources is almost a must that contractor must have. That is, it can differentiate between contractor A and B with regard to utilization of these resources. Some contractor might have their own machinery. If they have their own machinery or sufficient type of machinery, normally this contractor will have a competitive advantages. Because if you purchase and own that machinery, it will cost you less than if you rent the machineries. Okay, and then proper construction method is another strong point that can differentiate between a winning and losing contractor. Normally, winning contractor or well-done contractor, they basically have acquire a proper method of construction. Even a simple thing like piling. Piling, we normally thought that normally we will drive a pile and then later on we will do the excavation. But there are companies who do the other way around. Okay, that's what they call it top-down method. And they are very successful. I know one company that have been doing that kind of piling in Malaysia, very successful. They are getting a lot of big project around Kuala Lumpur. Okay, so method can play very important part. And then man, meaning to say sufficient or what we call adequate number of people. You do not want to bring so many people to the construction site and then simply doing nothing because you do not plan properly. Okay, but then the other issue is that you have to pay them. Once they are at the construction site, even though they have nothing to do, then the salary is accumulative. So you need to plan properly. Plan properly meaning to say, we only want a sufficient number of workers. Not too much, not too little, just sufficient number. That could basically fulfill our obligation or fulfill our planning. And then what else? Money. Money basically do not stand alone, but in order to pay for machinery, man, material, and even choosing the right method, basically you require money. So, so money, even money, you need to do a planning also. That's what we call cash flow planning. You can do cash flow forecasting even before the start of the project. How do you do cash flow forecasting? It is based on planning or scheduling. Without the scheduling, you simply cannot draw your bar chart, and without the bar chart, you cannot develop your S-curve, what we call financial S-curve. And then how exactly are you going to track how much money you have spent and how much money basically you have profited? Okay, you see? So those things are, we call it resources. You need to utilize resources as optimum as possible. That is the best thing that you can do. Then you need, in order to fulfill the objective of the project, you use the resources, then you are going to use what we call management mechanism or management process. First one is planning, organizing, leading, directing, staffing, what we call communicating, coordinating, motivating, and lastly is monitoring and control. There are a lot more. I just put a few things. Okay, this is what we call management process. Okay, the one that we learn that we show you before, initiating, planning, are all embedded inside this one. okay, embedded inside this few terminology, okay. Maximizing profit. Okay, a lot of times when you are in the construction business or as a contractor or whatever business that you do, the mentality is basically to maximize profit as much as possible. In construction, remember, simple formula, what we call value. This is what we call tender value. Tender value meaning to say the value that you are getting from client. This is what, how much client will pay you. And then total cost. Total cost comprised of direct costs plus indirect costs. Normally the indirect cost could be around 10%, direct cost could be around 90%. Then only profit come into this equation. Okay, so you as a contractor, normally during the tendering stage, you need to calculate your costs. Okay, how do you calculate your costs? You need to have a drawing is given to you. You need to extract the quantity if the quantity are not there, or even you need to double check the quantity given by the client. And then you will come up with a unit rate of doing works. Whatever works, there must be a unit rate. We call it unit rate. What is unit rate is all about? Consists of man, machine, material, plus profit. You embed it inside there. But at the end of the day, you already know the overall profit. But when you put into the unit rates, you basically hide your profit from the client. The client do not know how much you mark up each of the work that you do. Okay, what the client interested is how much that they need to pay you. Okay, let's say the contract value is 10 million, whereas you calculate your total cost is 9 million, and the remaining 1 million is basically your profit. It's around 10%, which is quite low anyway. Normally in Malaysia, the profit, the initial profit put by the contractor could be around 15, 20 or 25%. But at the end of the day, they might not get what they have targeted due to what? Due to poor monitoring and control. That is the issue. Okay, how to maximize profit? To maximize profit, one of the easy way is basically to cheat. You see, cheat. If you cheat, if you you have what we call conduct, what we call unethical conduct. If you bribe someone, let's say club of work, instead of club of work rejected your quality, which is the quality of your work is very bad, but instead of rectifying the work, then you bribe the clerk of work or the supervisor there, then you can get away. But that is not a sustainable business anyway. Okay, that is not the practice that we want. We want ethical conduct of practice. Okay, so actually you can make a lot of profit in construction industry. In Malaysia, for instance, if we compare to many industry, let's say the first profitable industry could be banking. Bank never broke. They always make money. Whose money? Your money. Okay. And normally bank will make around 30 to 35% from the published what we call accounting. Because once you are in the stock market, let's say you are a public listed company, you have to reveal your accounting, meaning to say how much profit you make per year, how much you have spent, etc., etc. And normally from the report, we figure out that banking normally make a lot of money, around 30 to 35 net profit. And what else? The next industry could be I would say retailing, okay. And then how about construction? Construction normally around 10% net profit from public listed company record. So that's why I say to you, normally when people take up any job, when they calculate whatever the cost, they normally can make profit. Even the contract given by government, Malaysian government, normally you can profit around 15 to 20% easily, because the unit rate is substantially a little bit higher than the normal one, just to help out the contractor. But it is the contractor who basically poorly manage their project. At the end of the day, they might get profit which is less than that. How do you maximize your profit? Reducing error. Reducing error have something to do with the quality of work. If your work is not being rejected, it's okay. Then basically you have no problem of unnecessary costs. Eliminate of waste, construction waste. In our industry, we throw a lot of construction waste, around 10%. If you can reduce that construction waste, that kind of waste can be turned into money, okay, which basically add to the profit. Then what else? Reduce uncertainty in time and cost. How do we do that? We do that through planning. So that is the purpose of planning. Planning is basically to reduce those things. Once we put everything on paper based on certain fact and figures, for sure we basically reduce those things. Unnecessary penalty. This penalty has something to do with extension of time. You do not want to get your project delay. Delay again have something to do with time or schedule. Quality control, project control can refer to many aspects in terms of safety, environment, and then etc. etc. Utilizing project resources again, as I mentioned, you do not want to bring as many equipment, as many people to the construction site with the thinking that you can get the job done very quickly. No, you can only get the job done very quickly through a proper planning. Proper planning, using proper method, using the right sizing of equipment, the right sizing of manpower, then only that thing can be achieved. All right, so we finish on 1 hour. We want to take a break. Okay, pause record. Okay, so planning and scheduling. What is planning and scheduling? Planning and scheduling basically provides a project plan and schedule that is essential in project time management. You see, the bigger thing is basically we call it project time management, managing time. So inside managing time, because time is quite abstract, so it is quite difficult to manage time, but what we can manage is basically we call it schedule. Why? Because schedule we can attach certain value in terms of starting, ending, etc., etc. So that's what normally in time management. So planning, scheduling basically sit inside the time management scope. Okay. So scope of project time management, basically planning. That would be the first thing. So that's why I mentioned to you, planning and scheduling is not the same. They are interrelated. Okay, there is a definition for that. Similarly, monitoring and controlling is not the same. Okay, they basically different terminology, but they are interrelated. That's why normally people say planning and scheduling, monitoring and control, and then scheduling. So what should come first is basically planning, and then only scheduling. Then the third one is basically tracking and controlling. What is tracking? Tracking is basically similar to monitoring, but uh, in scheduling, in planning scheduling, we normally use the word tracking. Even in the software, Microsoft Project and Primavera, they use tracking. So now you understand tracking is similar to monitoring. Okay, so monitoring and control is the third step there. All right, construction site management. For those of you who basically have learned site management last semester, you might have come across this slide. So the rest of you might not have taken this course. You will see this thing next semester. Okay. Okay. During construction, during the construction management, we are managing what we call site, construction site. Okay. Similarly, in construction site, what we are dealing with is basically time, quality, cost, safety and health, and then environment. You see, this is what we call project requirement, as I mentioned before. And under the time, you see, you notice time, long, medium, short program, monitoring and recording progress, planning progress meeting, schedule for information requirement. You see, all those are the things that normally during construction management or site management, those are the things that we focus on. Okay, we focus on. All right. This is just a recap anyway. Okay, why planning and scheduling? Planning and scheduling is needed for mostly tracking and controlling. Remember, first, what we do is basically planning and scheduling, then executing. Executing meaning to say we execute the work. That is the real construction work is all about. And during construction, sometimes we can plan, but we never know. Sometimes something might happen, so the plan might change. Never mind. So once we do the tracking, we can know to what extent we deviate from the plan. Then, if we deviate too much, then we start doing the controlling. Okay, control. What do we control? Project time and cost, because time and cost are normally interrelated. The longer the activity that you spend, basically the more cost that you need to pay, because you need to pay the equipment, you need to pay the people. Sometimes you goes into the delays, you need to pay whatever thing, penalty, etc., etc. And then that will be the first thing. Second thing, claim analysis, quantification and defense. What is this thing? Claim. Okay, in construction, the normal practice is that you need to do the work first. Then only people will pay you. And people, the client will pay you according to the progress of the work. So every month, you will submit what we call progress claim, progress report. You call it progress report. Inside the progress report will basically consist all your claim. Okay, claim meaning to say claim in terms of monetary. You claim that you have progress so much, or you have done all kind of quantity. Okay, you mentioned about the quantity, the work, etc., etc., in terms of measurable, things. And then how basically that money is being attached. Okay, you tell the client that you have poured so much concrete, you have put so much rebar, and you have done so much excavation, formwork, etc., etc. Then the client will pay you. But before the client pay you, they will basically check first. So that's why at the construction site, other than contractor who basically doing all the work, they will be client representative. It could be headed by what we call RE, resident engineer, or assistant resident engineer, and then they might have a clerk of work. Okay, clerk of work is basically all those people are representative of the client to check the work of the contractor. So they are the one that can confirm whether it is true or not. Okay, so and then that would be in terms of cost. How about in terms of progress, in terms of time? So you need to come up with the tracking Gantt chart or what we call the progress network diagram that show the plan versus actual. So people can see, even though people can see outside there at the real construction, people know already, but on paper you can also show, because normally people in the office, especially headquarters, they wouldn't have a time to go to the site or whatever. For instance, they rely much on visual report. You can send them pictures, you can send them in terms of graphic that show between plan versus actual. That is the normal indicator that we normally put inside the progress report. Okay, as a defend meaning to say you claim that you have done so much, so you have to defend yourself, because sometimes client might not pay as much as what you claim. That is a sometimes normal practice also, because they thought that you are overclaim. That could be one possibility. Then the third one, effective utilization of resources. When we say resources, mainly we refer to labor, man, machine, and material. The three items. Main component of direct cost is basically normally people, we pay to labor, equipment, and then material. Well, as I mentioned before, it is not how much man, machinery, and material that you bring in. It is how basically you plan in such a way you optimize the utilization. And in order to show the optimization of utilization later on, we do have a topic when we cover about resource management. The word resource smoothing, the word resource leveling will come into this concept. Okay, later on you will understand. Oh, resource utilization is basically have something to do with leasing. In Microsoft project, there is a function or button with regard to resource leveling. Similarly with I think Primavera, okay, but not the resource smoothing, because resource smoothing require a lot of human eyes. Okay, you need to look at those things, and then you need to do some adjustment by yourself. Computer cannot do that. Planning. So planning allow us to develop framework for project execution, monitoring, and control. So without planning, and then how exactly you know what to do? You simply cannot, because you need to plan work to be done, and then you delegate the work to the respective person or personnel. Then only you can monitor and then control. Otherwise, who is going to do the work? People also do not know what work have to be done. So in order to do that, that's why planning do have a few steps. One of the steps later on, we are going to come up with perhaps the first thing first, WBS, work breakdown structure. We do have a topic for that, don't worry. Okay, failing to plan is planning to fail. Fail to plan is planning to fail. There is a famous word by, I think, US president, one of the US president, not the Donald Trump anyway, the old president, I think Eisenhower or something. He said, failing to plan is planning to fail. Okay, why people fail in planning? First, lack of commitment to planning. Yeah, that is very true. People think that planning is you can play around, you can fool people. You know what? In project management, planning is considered as heart of project management. Heart of project management. So human being, you survive because your heart is still beating. If your heart there is no beating, that's it. Similarly, in project management, planning is the heart, is the core or the fundamental. Everything starts with the planning. So if you put planning as not your first priority, or if you do planning which half-heartedly, then at the end of the day, you are not going to see the result. Failure to develop and implement sound strategies. Okay, once you already plan, then you can come up with strategy in order to execute your plan, okay, to fulfill your KPI. Oftentimes, sometimes people are very good at planning, but then very poor at coming up with the strategy or implementing. Lack of a meaningful objective and goal. Everything start with when we want to do planning, we must set the what we call vision and vision. What are the KPI objective to be achieved at the end of the day? That should be very clear. Failure to see scope or plan. Sometimes when you do planning, the scope of your work can grow bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So that's why you need to lock at the beginning of the project the scope. Otherwise, you simply cannot plan because you are planning a moving target. You must log those things first. So that's why in PMI, the triple constraint being mentioned is the scope, cost, and then time. You see the scope, because the scope is very important as well. Failure to see planning as rational process. Okay, people do not put thought into planning. You must put thinking, because planning is a thinking process. Um, Normally, planning is being done by experienced personnel. You cannot give the planning to the intern or practical student. They simply cannot. They do not have the experience to think about the overall project and put everything on paper. Okay, excessive reliance on experience. Even though experience play a very important part in planning, but in this statement, it simply say you cannot basically overconfident. Overconfident in anything can kill you anyway. You overconfident. And let's say you play football, you thought that you are going to win, but at the end of the day, on the last second, the opponent can score. You see, that is overconfident. Okay, uh, every project is what we call unique by itself. So you must take a project seriously in such a way you cannot expect a similar problem. You have to expect that some kind of problem will exist which could be different from what you have experienced. So you need to prepare mentally. Why people fail in planning? Continue. Lack of management support. For instance, let's say you have been assigned to do planning scheduling because you have learned in your master project and in your master degree. Then after you graduate, you sell yourself. Oh, I have taken this class. I'm well versed with Microsoft project, and now your boss asks you to do the planning, in charge of planning. Okay, but then the issue is that when you want to do planning, you need to have sufficient what we call a good computer, software, proper software, and you need people to help you. You need to have a good printer, whatever. That is what we call support. But that is what we call the hardware. But you need to have some kind of soft skill. You need to be sent to training, as I mentioned. If your boss really understand about planning scheduling, he should give a full commitment. Okay, if you want to learn planning scheduling, okay, send you to a few training courses, and then you go and learn there. Make sure you come back, and then you put everything into practice. That is what we call commitment. Example of commitment. Clear delegation. Okay. In WBS, work breakdown structure, the purpose we develop the work in such a way so that you want to delegate the work to respective personnel, the right people. Okay, so the right people must be delegate with some kind of balance. Sometimes people do not want to cooperate because they get more job compared to others, whereas the salary remain the same. So you must have a balance between work among the workers or personnel. Lack of adequate control technique. In order to control things, you must use a proper technique. Different technique can be used for quality control, safety control, environmental control, cost control, etc., etc. They do have different techniques. So you must basically master those techniques and implement them or customize according to your work site or your organization. Resistant to change. This is again one of the biggest thing is basically attitude. You cannot change people's attitude with regard to something. Let's say, for instance, you are running late. In terms of time, let's say your project is running late. What does that thing mean? Meaning to say, in order to catch up, you must double up the effort. You must be able to work overtime or even during weekend. If people still work according to the old productivity, at the end of the day, you are not going to be able to catch up. Some people do have that kind of mentality. They just want to do the layback thing, just relax until the end of the day. So you cannot. But changing people mentality is not going to be easy because there is a saying say it is very difficult to break the habit. Okay. But anyway, you need to manage this thing. And then what is planning is all about? Planning is a thinking process. In a simple term, thinking process. You put your thought into something because normally when you do planning, planning basically doesn't have those things is not there yet. Planning is basically meant for the future. That is what planning is all about. You do the planning for the thing which basically do not exist yet. So in such a way, in order to help you to do a proper planning, you can start with what we call W. People say sometimes 5W plus 1H. Sometimes people say W is 5Y plus 1H. So what is the W? What? What must be done? This basically to relate to the objective or your KPI. If you know what to do, then it is easier so that you put everything inside the list. Okay, how is basically how those things is going to be done. Okay, perhaps it relate to the work method. Proper work method could help you in achieving those work in a better way. What sequential? Who will involve? And then which item, where in term of location. And then remember one thing, when. That is another element. Okay. So planning requires ability to visualize discrete work element. What information do you have when you want to do your planning? The only information you have is basically drawing. So that's why nowadays, previously we used drawing on paper. So that's why nowadays we do have what we call BIM, whatever the software that help us visualize. One, we are able to visualize, then basically we can plan properly. Where to put our crane, tower crane, for instance. Previously, people cannot imagine when they put a tower crane, how long or what is the coverage of the boom of the crane. Can the crane cover everywhere at the construction site so that if we want to bring one item from one place to another, then the crane can do the job. Otherwise, we need to hire another crane. Okay. Before this, we cannot simply imagine, but with the help of whatever the computer nowadays, we can come up with the 3D, 4D, whatever D that we can help to visualize in order for you to make planning better. Intimate knowledge of construction method. You see, construction method. You cannot get this thing from the book. Yes, you can learn from the construction technology course, but it is very limited. Just imagine construction is very big what we call discipline. to construct a school building using conventional method and then IBS method, which is, could be totally different. You want to construct bridge, also there are many methods. Okay, so this kind of work method normally you get from the working experience. Of course, there are some books who basically write or tell us about this construction method, but sometimes it is quite difficult. It is quite limited. But nowadays, with the help of videos, YouTube, you can easily Google what kind of construction method, which is quite helpful. Okay, instead of waiting for you to get experience on something, nowadays you can cut short on learning curve. And then establishing interdependent. What is interdependent? Interdependent means sequence of work. What to do first, what to do second, next, etc., etc. In construction, we normally start the work with what we call site preparation. We clear the topsoil, remove, that's what we call site clearing. Okay, remove all the root or whatever, uprooted the trees, topsoil, etc., etc. And we basically do the what we call leveling, cut and fill, and then we level to the level that we want, and then we do the point that we want to excavate when needed, and then etc., etc. Then we go into the substructure work. Substructure work involved could be piling or whatever foundation, the type of foundation, and then it goes into the ground beam, etc., etc. Then only we start the superstructure. Superstructure in Malaysia, normally we construct frame. Frame consists of beam, column, and then repeat it again, beam, column, etc. And then we put a wall, and then we put the roof structure, and then roofing, and then at the same time we can do the wall, interior, etc., etc. And then we do the finishing. That is what we call the step. Okay, that is a general step, but in construction, there could be thousands and thousands of items, small item that you need to put into the building. And how basically exactly you are going to know. This is what we call work experience will help you in order to establish this interdependent. Everything need planning. Okay, in the project management area that I mentioned, there are 10 areas. They are planning for everything: project communication, scope, cost, resources, risk, procurement, ICT, time, quality, project integration. Everything can be planned. In fact, in our life also, we do planning without realizing or without using any method. Automatically, you have done planning. Except now, our focus is on time planning. This is our focus, scheduling. All right. You see, this is an example of project management body of knowledge, or what we call knowledge area. When it comes to planning, all these thing is being filled up. See, because everything involves some kind of planning. But our focus is on item number 6, meaning to say we are focused on the time management aspect, on the scheduling. All right, so plan design. Okay, plan are nothing. Oh, this guy, Eisenhower. Okay, the first proverb might not be his, was a different person. Okay, Eisenhower, he say, plan are nothing. This is American president. Planning is everything. So what does this proverb mean? Plan are nothing, planning is everything. So plan meaning to say the thinking process. Everybody can suggest or give ideas. To give ideas is very easy, but to execute the idea, that is the most difficult part. Okay, that is the most difficult part, which basically require a lot of challenges. This is what the proverb basically mean. So first thing first, you develop the plan, then you implement the plan. You implement the plan, then you monitor, detect deviation, meaning to say monitor, similar thing as monitor. Then you monitor, and then you can calculate to what extent is the deviation. Is it big or small? Normally, if the deviation is small, we don't have to be panicked. Okay, we don't have to be panicked. We focus on the one basically have a bigger deviation, and then, but we do not basically for the small deviation, we keep those things posted, or basically we keep monitoring, because sometimes small deviation can grow bigger and bigger and bigger. But in terms of action, our action is basically focusing on big deviation between plan and actual. Remember one thing, there is no such thing as perfect plan. Nobody can plan perfectly. The only one that can plan perfectly is God or Allah. Okay, as a human, it is very normal. Based on your limited capability, you can put your thinking, you can come up with a good planning based on fact and figures, but you never know what is going to happen. So don't be panic when you implement. Something might not be according to your 100% plan, so you must monitor and then make correction. In correction is basically give you chance to revise plan. Okay, to revise plan. Okay, to revise and then implement, and then this is like a cycle going on and on until you complete your project. Okay, so meaning to say people who work in the construction industry, or if you are doing a project, as long as project still going on, meaning to say your job is not done yet, don't just be too happy. Once you hand over, then only you could celebrate. Okay, you have completed the project with some kind of satisfaction, then you can sleep. uh, uh, you have a good sleep for a few nights until you start a new project. When you start a new project, then the headache will come back to you. Okay, because it is never ending problem. That is part and parcel. Key element in planning. Okay, what are the things that we need to implement? Okay, first thing, generate. What to generate? Generate WBS. We do have one slide for this thing later on, not today. So WBS simply mean the breakdown of the work into a smaller unit, measurable unit. Let's say, I mentioned to you, in construction, we can break down, let's say a project. Okay, you break down into a few items. Let's say site preparation. Site preparation, you can break down into many units. One of the thing is site clearing. You do the site clearing. Okay, and then you can do cut and fill, you can do excavation, and you can do many ground treatment, etc., or slope protection under this site preparation work. Okay, you prepare the land so that you want to construct your building. The land that you get might be hilly or whatever, but now you prepare the land or the site. Okay, so you see, from this simple activity, site preparation, you already have the sub activity. As I mentioned, site clearing, cut and fill, excavation, slope protection could be, and then what else? Soil treatment. There could be many sub activities, and even site clearing also can be divided into a smaller item, because site clearing sometimes you need to uproot. you need to demolish all whatever building in your construction site. You need to cut, you need to remove topsoil, and etc. etc. Even this thing you can put into smaller, measurable. You can attach quantity to each of the item. So that's what we call generate. Then second one, estimate. What to estimate? You estimate activity duration and cost. So how do you estimate duration? Let's say you want to do set clearing. How many days that you need to spend? Is that you are the one that put the thinking? Okay, let me pause record. Okay, sorry. We continue. Duration. Okay, how do you calculate the duration? So we are going to go through the duration later on in a different slide. Duration is sometimes quite difficult to calculate, but you can calculate using many methods. One of the methods is using productivity rate. Productivity rate, meaning to say, for instance, based on the equipment, manpower, or in combination, or a crew, how much that crew or that person or that machine can do certain work in a certain period of time. If you have the quantity, then basically you can calculate, okay, based on productivity data, okay. And then how do you get the cost? Okay, you will get the cost. Let's say certain work you require man, machine, and material. You can calculate how much machine, how many machine that you require, how much material, and then how many people involved, how many days, and then from that you get the cost. If you want to put this thing in terms of amount to be given to the client, then you have to mark up with the profit. Okay, but the client normally do not know how much is your profit that you put. Okay, but for if you are contractor, that's how you calculate the cost. So that's why planning and scheduling, time and cost is always interrelated. Determine. What to determine? Determine job logic, sequence, the relationship between activities. Later on, we are going to be introduced to the concept of finish to start relationship, start to start, start to finish, finish to finish. That is what we call the terminology used to indicate relationship between activities. You are going to arrange the activity in such a way in a sequential manner. For instance, in construction, we do not construct roof first, isn't it? Roof could be one of the last thing we do. So everything must be basically interrelated. Then, lastly, draw graphic representation in a network. This is what we call scheduling technique. There could be many. Okay. As I mentioned before, planning is a thinking process. Everything is you think about something, but then the issue is that your thinking process, how are you going to transfer to the right person who will execute the job? Whereas normally, if you are doing, if you are the planner, you normally do not involve with the project execution. You are not the person that will go to the ground and do all kind of rebar work, form work, concreting, etc., etc. The people who do the work are different team. They could be considered as workers, supervisor, foreman, supervisor, and site engineer. Whereas you are the planner or project manager, you do the planning. So how are you going to put your thinking process or even transfer the thinking process? So that's why you need to put them into graphic. So in planning, people develop different technique. Technique basically have different graphic so that you can see. If we learn about all those graphic, at the end of the day, we should be able to read as if, for instance, the Egypt, the Mumia. If you go to the pyramid, whatever, they do have the old language. They call it, whatever the name of that language. But the language is in terms of the drawing. So each of the symbol drawing represents something. And people who study those things, from the drawing itself, they can understand what is the story that those things is telling us. Who is this character and whatnot. You see, just based on the graphic. Similarly, in planning and scheduling, the graphic is the representation of the thinking process you want to put on paper. Okay. All right. We have been talking about planning, etc., etc. And as I mentioned to you, planning and scheduling do have different meaning. They are interrelated, but not the same. If I ask you now, can you differentiate between planning and scheduling? Okay, now, planning. Start with planning. Planning involves making decision, the thinking process. All right. So, in planning, you will answer all kind of W. What, how, and then what else? Where, who will involve, what, or even which, or even where is already there, which type of equipment you are going to use, except another one, another W. See, when. When is on, we normally associate with scheduling. Okay, scheduling. So, meaning to say, the what, who, where, how, that is what we call planning, the thinking process. When is when those things is happening, what we call executing. Or let's say, example, okay, example, in the next 8 weeks, we are going to have a semester break, 1 week semester break. Let's say you already plan, okay, you plan, you want to go for holiday or vacation. If the COVID is not there, it's not here anymore. Okay, let's say you want to go back to your kampong or your hometown for 1 week. All right, that is what we call planning. Or you want to go to Kuala Lumpur. You want to go to Bukit Bintang. International student also always like to go to Bukit Bintang. I do not know what they are searching. Okay, let's say you want to go to Bukit Bintang during the semester break. That is the planning. And during that planning, thinking process, you will think about with whom you want to go, how are you going to get there, and then what is the date, etc., etc., etc. So everything is on your head. But you are not going to travel when the time is not there yet. So that is what we call when. When is when the date is there, when the semester break start, and then you will start traveling according to what you plan. So when you want to reach, you will arrive at certain point, and then when you want to come back, that is real thing happening. So that's what we call scheduling. Okay, so that's why planning and scheduling is always being put together. They fulfill the scope of time management. But time management do have another one. Another last one is basically tracking and controlling. Okay. Lastly, about this slide, step to effective time management. Okay, step to effective time management. First thing first, examine contract. Okay, so when you are getting a project, or even you want to decide whether you want to get a project or not, to bid for a project or not, you must take a look at what could be the information from the project, when basically the project will start, and what could be the duration of the project, to make sure that you are capable of taking those projects at that particular time or not. Okay, that is very important. All the information is inside the contract document. List major contractual obligation. Okay, remember requirement of the project. One of the requirement is to fulfill contractual obligation, whether you can fulfill or not. If you cannot fulfill, don't take that contract or project. It will kill you anyway. Divide project into major work area. This is what we call when you want to develop the WBS, you break down into major work area. The one that I gave you, site preparation, substructure, superstructure, external works. This could be considered as major works. Okay, major work for the construction. Building technology implies sequence. Okay, this is what we call work sequence. Work sequence based on the construction technology that you choose. Different technology that you bring into the construction site will have implication to the sequence of work or even the timing of the project execution. Okay, but unfortunately in Malaysia, we are quite slow in adopting a new technology. Technology are there in the market already, but because the technology was being developed by foreign countries, they could be sometimes very expensive. Okay, so that's why you see construction sites sometimes using the old way of doing things. As long as the project can be completed according to the quality, there is no what we call, there is nothing wrong using the old technology anyway, but new technology could help getting things faster. Find productivity, duration, and cost. All these things are interrelated. Calculate initial schedule. Okay. Okay. Sometimes you want the schedule, the indicator of the project duration very fast. Let's say you want to know when can the project can be completed. Let's say 2 years. But if you calculate in detail, then only you know the breakdown. But sometimes you want to get some ideas. Okay. Schedule adjustment. Okay, there is nothing wrong when things will not go according to your plan. You can always revise plan. As long as time is still there, you can always revise. Resource evaluation. Okay, you must also evaluate to what extent you have utilized the resources, because all the resources that you use have a relationship with the cost. As a contractor, for instance, you want the cost to be as low as possible. Time cost trade-off. What is this thing? Okay, let's say you want to compress the project. Compress project. Let's say project is initially 2 years. You want to compress 1.5 years. The issue is that how much is the project will cost you? Is it extra? Is it less? Or is it remain the same? Normally people say it could be more. Why more? Because when you do the project in 2 years, you already design or plan so that it will do at the lowest cost. When you want to compress the project, for sure you have to work extra time, you have to bring more equipment. So you need to come up with the different technique of different technology, which could be costly. So the cost will increase. But again, the time remain the essence. Is it, which one is more important? Is it the time, or you can sacrifice a little bit of the cost? Sometimes it happens that way. Okay, we will show this concept later on. Total project cash flow. Okay, so once you develop your planning, your scheduling, then later on you can develop your S curve. Okay, include all important procurement. What is procurement? Procurement is related to purchasing. So tender is part of the procurement also, but when you are doing a real work, basically procurement involve purchasing thing. Okay, when you want to order how much, you negotiate the price, then you need to monitor the delivery. All those things are related to procurement because it can have an impact on your planning. Because if, for instance, certain material are being delivered late, then it will affect your work. Okay. All right. So this is the end of the first. Okay, sorry, the first slide.